at 6:04 p.m. First order of business, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item for discussion is the St. Charles Highway Maintenance agreement. Typically, every year we had for every year up until the last couple went out to St. Charles County. It did most of our slab replacements, street maintenance. This year, decided to go back with them for a bid to do our final phase of our road plan. And I know there was some questions about the contract. I think James has researched this extensively and has a report on it.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So last meeting, there was some questions about contract, rather the letter of engagement, I should say. It's not contract. I did speak to the county. They did give me an extra day or so to square away with the board, which has historically been a consent agenda item. So, I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that there was a question about the contract, why we don't follow the contract. As I stated last time, contract prices are set on May 1st of each year, but they are updated on May 1st of the upcoming year during the contract. So even though we do have pricing that's really preliminary pricing, that pricing will change May 1st of next year in the middle of our contract. Also, contract work that is done outside of the scope of St. Charles County is subject to whatever the bid prices end up being next year. So St. Charles County is under no obligation to fulfill whatever their estimated pricing would be. And I believe that that's in part because pricing has been so volatile over the last couple of years. Obviously, their pricing hasn't changed as much as it is the larger contract work, such as slab replacement, asphalt overlays, et cetera. So again, as I mentioned before, we do have a set price for our snow plowing and general maintenance, the slab repair plan, the slab repairs. St. Charles County will put those out to bid for us, so we don't have to do that in-house. We're estimating about $1.78 million, which we expect will finish phase 4 of our road plan. In addition to about another $250,000 in mill and overlay of Brook Lane and Oakside Court, which we are going to be doing jointly with St. Charles County, because that road does fall, I think 57% of the right of ways are in our city, 43% are in unincorporated. And then there's some restriping, just under 60,000 is where we're estimating, but we went ahead and rounded it up to 60,000 is where our city engineer has gotten our planned joint and crack sealing to finish the neighborhoods that we've just completed in slab replacements, to go ahead and fill these joints and cracks in that area that were not part of the recent slab replacement. And then continuing on with our street sign replacement program. Our street signs we buy in-house, but they put them up for us. And then a $20,000 cushion, which we typically put in for unplanned work requests that might be unforeseen work. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the letter or the engagement.
I'd like to have a conversation with the city staff and our legal counsel at some point over the next week to talk about that, because parts of that interpretation of the contract seem to conflict with previous legal interpretation. I just want to make sure that we're getting that.
So the previous legal interpretation was on bills 26 or 1626, which is a 5-year-old contract. The contract which we operate under, which is ordinance 2217, clearly states the county shall provide the municipality of an update of attachment A by May 1st of each year, and such updated costs shall apply immediately and remain in effect until April 30th of the following year. So you are correct that at one point in the past, the previous year was set on June 1st or May 30th, and that pricing was supposed to hold throughout the next year. However, that contract also stated that St. Charles County is under no obligation to provide work that is essentially outside of the scope of not outside the scope, but the county shall have no obligation to provide services that will result in the county incurring costs in excess of the estimated services budget. So again, they didn't have an obligation to hold the pricing, or they didn't have an obligation to do the work if they were going to lose money. But the new contract, and this is a contract we've had for the last couple of years, says that, the pricing does change on May 1st. So that's what we've been operating under. And I don't know if that was changed in part because of questions in the past about the wording, or I would say that it probably was becoming untenable for the county because the pricing had changed so often. If you're going to have pricing try to change or hold for 18 months, they're either just not going to honor it or they're just not going to do the work, which is what we talked about last time, because the volatility in the concrete and slab replacement has been so much that you're just, you can't see what 18 months from now the slab replacement is going to be. So the current contract, how we operate or how it's been operating is what the city operates under now. I know that, and I appreciate you providing me what the city attorney had previously provided us, but and John Young had confirmed this for me. That was an examination of the previous contract.
Got it. Okay. I would still like to have that conversation because there were some things there that give me pause, but I just want to make sure that I fully understand what the expectations are. And I would invite up to 2 more aldermen to join in, so we don't have a quorum, but it's the primary thing.
Well, I mean, we're obviously going to have this contract coming up in here shortly. What is the concern or question that the board would have regarding, I guess the contract?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, I didn't see anything in there that the estimated services budget. I did see that the county could deny, they had to agree to it before it was done, and that they could deny anything over that after they agreed to a certain amount. But I didn't see anything where if the city puts forward that estimated services budget, that we could then, if the price goes too high the next year, that we can renege on that. But I don't want to go through the entire contracting here. We've got a lot of stuff on the agenda, so that's why I say I'd like to.
And I also, last year, that's what we did, and that's something that I mentioned last meeting. We, December or January, notified St. Charles County that we've decided that we're going to extend our contract with M&H instead of going out to bid. And we didn't go out to, St. Charles County didn't go out to bid. So I don't have that I don't have that specific line item on here, but it's certainly not been an issue in the past. We did the same thing with the crack sealing and the restriping when we kind of threw an audible out there for them last year because they were crack sealing in a neighborhood where they were working off a very old work order, and they were crack sealing in an area where we were ripping up slabs. So,
yeah,
that hasn't certainly been an issue in the past, but we can certainly look at the wording. I don't think St. Charles County has any intention of trying to hold us to something, especially contracted work that they haven't even bid out.
And I do want to say for the record, I appreciate the relationship that we've had with the road board, and the county road maintenance. I think they're amazing and I want to keep working with them, in good faith, but just want to have that conversation.
And I think I can point to the provisions in the contract that address the concerns that were raised.
Okay.
That are, I think there are new provisions to the contract that just memorialize the practice that has been going on for many years. But the agreement, most recent agreement, the one we're currently under, has new provisions that are important. One is we pay quarterly instead of on January 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we pay over a period of time. B,
Oh, we always do that.
it used to be that we had to pay it January 1 in full,
Okay.
and now it's quarterly. B, for anything that's on a time and material basis, they provided quarterly accounting. And as we review those quarterly accounting, the city expressly has the authority to review and reconsider anything they've provided as budgeted.
Okay.
So that's all set forth in the contract. It's been the practice for years to do that, but now it's all set forth.
And if the council is happy with the contract, then I'm happy with the contract, and I'd like to let it die there.
Anybody else have anything to say?
I just have a technical question, more probably geared towards Tom. In the past, we have had some suppliers that would swipe the crack sealer on and it would be a 4-inch wide half of it. I have seen some contractors working for the county this year that have used that approach. But we're trying to stay away from that on everything we do, and this would happen here, and we make sure we reiterate that to whoever's doing it.
The mayor has in the past, specifically when it comes to M&H, had requested those what's called tipped in the joints. And so that's occurred. We also last year, most notably in Whispering Pine and Pinnacle Point, and some of the work that was done through the county contract, much to their resistance, they did conform to that.
Okay.
Well, as of today, the conversations I had with the county superintendent, absolutely no way they will not do that again.
Okay. Yeah, because I know the last year in Darden Cove and some of those subdivisions that we did with the county previous year, they were very reluctant. And so now, that's new information with the mayor.
But you're saying they are not going to tip it in?
They will not tip it in.
Can we get to that point? Because it's been something that was up a couple of years ago when we first started the roads program. Can we get a price from M&H or some other company or put out the bid for that sealant to see if we can get it look nicer?
I don't know if, I'd like to talk to Tom about this, and, I will be quite honest, every single person in St. Charles County and in other communities, when I talk to them as far as people who handle these roads, their opinion is, if you do not squeegee it in, you're not gonna get it to hold, you're not gonna get a proper seal. You're going to get moisture between there, you're gonna get spalling at the seams, you're gonna get concrete breaking up. So I mean, it's either do we go for longevity or vanity?
So whenever
that's all
we last had this conversation, I did some research into it and I brought to Luke at the time, there are some products, 3M makes a product that is supposed to be rated for that and have a 50-year lifespan or something like that, outlet to concrete. I'd love to forward that on and see what you think, but I think
Ultimately, it's not going to be, the product, it's going to be the application. The application is insufficient to make sure that it's sealed completely with no moisture getting below there. Right.
Well, there's some moisture because concrete is porous, so it'll go around it.
Well, I say moisture, just water getting through there or popping up or, so. I mean, like I said, we can do further research on it. Obviously, again, to the point, we're not signing a contract with anybody to do it tonight, but before that's done, we can certainly look at whether or not we'll find a different contractor to do it on a separate bid, or if we'll go with St. Charles County and what method we.
Point of information is, so the price that we're going to get for the square yardage to do the slab replacements will include that. But just a point of information on when they're doing slab replacement, they're required under that price to come back and do the joint sealing, just like M&H did. So if we decide to pull that out, there might not be a good method or way to extract. So say $78 a square yard is what the price comes out to. That includes the joint sealing of the replaced slabs. But if you decide that you're gonna try to do something separate, it's gonna be hard to probably have the county extract that number out. Point of information.
Appreciate that clarification.
Not saying you can't, I'm just saying you might be paying twice for the same thing
Fair point.
or similar.
Okay, moving on, city policy regarding citizen use of fireworks. All right, James, go ahead.
Sure. So we've spoken to, our residents, who made a complaint about this also, looked at both our city policy and policies of other communities. Most, but not all communities, like Garden Prairie allow some sort of a, time both before and after the 4th of July to engage in using fireworks, within the city limits. I think one of the issues that we have here, and I also spoke to, a resident who was a former owner of, many fireworks stands, had him review some of the documentation that was provided to us about the types and caliber of fireworks that were used during the 4th of July that was in question, that was maybe questionably not legal. He certainly thinks that those were of a size and caliber that would have had to been purchased with some sort of a, if you're purchasing them legally, I should say, he thought that those were certainly ones that would have to have some sort of a license to purchase. But of course, he wasn't looking at pictures. So the really looking for some direction from the board. I would suggest that in the weeks and maybe month leading up to 4th of July that we articulate via social media, any other methods we can to provide information to our residents about safe use of fireworks, dangers of fireworks, and at least educate them to recognize that if they're doing this, even though the law does not say that they can't shoot off fireworks during the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Garden Prairie, that, they're still liable if they hurt somebody, if they damage a vehicle, if they damage the street, if they damage somebody's house. Obviously, there's some people that think that the moratorium on the ban on fireworks is open season to do whatever they want. I know that there's several cities who, they question about how they've all gone by this, right? By saying like, oh, it's okay, you can shoot them off these 3 days, because people have taken that as license to go crazy. Unless you're going to ban it again and, enforce it. The only other thing I would suggest is we're going to have to try to educate people. At the same time, I think we'll also need to have a conversation with the sector vehicles that covered Garden Prairie during that time to make sure that they are at least looking to see if there are displays which clearly violate some sort of recreational residential fireworks use. If it is a commercial scale firework, if it is something that and there is some criteria which we do have, and these are by the state fire marshal, so this isn't something we would need to memorialize in an ordinance. This is stuff that's already illegal to use or use without a license and use without a permit. So even if they bought these legally with a license, state fire marshal still requires that you have a permit and permission to locally set them off. So can't just be like, then I had a license, so I turned, Monet Court into the 4th of July's central celebration. They would still need technically permit to do so. So there's several mechanisms for enforcement. I think that's, again, going to be education of the residents, education of our inspectors and law enforcement officers, and then just trying to enforce it as best we can. And residents always have the opportunity, especially if there's something that is dangerous, and this might be the only other thing that we can really discuss is is there something that we want to memorialize either in an ordinance or otherwise that kind of describes what the unsafe practices are, even though you can shoot off fireworks during that period of time? We want to say that, you know, it has to be in the yard, it has to be in the driveway, it can't be in the street, it can't be blocking traffic. I mean, there's certainly things like that that we can not only put into place, but then also make sure that the residents are educated about that. And again, law enforcement is enforcing it. So, you know, I'll leave that kind of open to the board as to how they maybe want to address that. I mean, there's some pluses and minuses, I think, to all of that. But we certainly, basis of all of this is going to be an educational campaign.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and as we do look at that, I think it's important to engage the fire protection districts, for their expertise in this, and understanding safer practices, how we proliferate some of the messages that they might already be sending out to the community. So.
Yeah, so I'm really conflicted on this one. I appreciate conversation on it because I've always really liked fireworks, but the more densely populated an area that I move into, the less trusting of them that I am. And I am sure that a lot of those directions and the guidance from the state and from fire marshals and things like that say something like follow manufacturer recommendations, for example. And I started looking those up in my research. A 2-inch mortar, which is pretty normal size for a mortar, according to most of the manufacturers I found, requires 200 feet of free space in all directions. You're not going to get that in a residential area. So I'm really conflicted because it's certainly a pastime. It's a way that we have historically, long before I entered this earth, celebrated 4th of July. But we had incidents this year of people who were not shooting off fireworks but had their house burned down. We had one individual who tragically died in their garage because of, right now it's believed to be fireworks, though it's hard to tell conclusively. So there really are concerns to those that don't partake in the festivities and the welfare of their properties. And that's what I am primarily concerned about. When you talk about rules and safeguards put in place, like not in public right of ways or not in the street, I think that's a good idea because there are arteries through neighborhoods that were completely blocked off either by smoke or people actively shooting off fireworks. I saw one of them blow up under a car because they didn't see it. And that seems really dangerous. But at the same time, if you say bring it into your driveway, you're just coming closer to houses. So it seems like one of those areas where we have to tread carefully, but there are serious ramifications.
In cases, please, I would ask everybody just to bear with me on this thought because I am just going from the cuff on this right now. But is there any possibility we could provide some sort of space that would give them a opportunity to safely shoot fireworks off? I think of the park in my ward at Bluebird Park, pretty wide area, creek bottom ground. It's generally safe, and give maybe specific times and ask the fire department for, or maybe we're just thinking out loud. So
and my first thoughts on that, I don't want to give anybody permission to set off fireworks because then you're taking a liability in your
yeah,
hands.
that's kind of my thoughts too.
So,
But
you know, there's no way I would be willing to. Yeah, even though it's an open field, you can shoot off fireworks. I wouldn't want that liability.
On top of that, I think the debris, especially out there in that open field with all the brush, that's a preservation area. I think might get.
well, not necessarily the specific area there,
Okay.
but just the idea of giving a location for folks to still be able to celebrate the 4th of July in a meaningful manner with fireworks, which has kind of been a tradition. So, but yeah, there's certainly issues with it. Again, very much off the cuff, just thinking out loud to the board is our session here.
Just like use town square, you know, close everything down and then afterwards just take a Take a street sweeper and go through and just clean it all
Hey,
up.
yeah, I mean, yeah, make it a big part.
It's hard to burn down just asphalt on the sides.
That's right.
You know, let me say, all the firemen that I know and work with, they always tell me nothing good starts with the word fire. So think about it, you know.
The firemen said that?
Yeah.
What a buzzkill.
It sounds like they don't trust their profession.
I think John Adams, sir, President John Adams.
No, I will say, I've spoken to some of the O'Fallon officers, and as far as releasing the moratoriums, they said in O'Fallon, they've seen a ridiculous decrease in calls for service because giving people 3 days to do it has made them more compliant with the law and given them an outlet versus saying it's not allowed, so they do it for 2 months straight. So I personally would not be supportive of.
As a former police dispatcher, I'll tell you that that's just because nobody's calling on those 3 days because they know it's a moot point anyway.
Right, well.
I don't know that anybody's being any more compliant. They're just like, why argue with, it's legal.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm making is if you make it illegal, then it's not just 3 days anymore, it's 20 days. And that's even worse to those that don't like fireworks.
I think it's worthy of kind of pointing out what we discussed is, and again, you made a point, we're looking at pictures and assessing that based off pictures alone, that those exceeded, I believe is the state standard. Those were look like 5 inch, but either way, I think something simple, you know, and it's certainly something we can discuss in greater detail. But kind of looking at making sure that we have some sort of local ordinance on board that says, here is the appropriate size. That way, if there are concerned citizens and our Carla, that while I think came in here, I mean, if she's there and she sees the same thing next year and it's, 25-inch tubes being launched at the same time and she's getting, her house is getting rained on with inert pieces of those explosive devices, and she can call up. And if they show up and then they're out there with 25-inch tubes that are only commercially available, and they're launching it there, then clearly that's not within the boundaries of not just city, but so to kind of encourage folks to call in and give some sort of a mechanism to respond with, or other than just.
I think from my perspective, I love fireworks. I haven't bought any and shot any of my own off in several years, mostly because I got tired of mowing my neighbor's yard and cleaning it up, because I think that if you shoot off fireworks, you should clean up your neighbor's yard and clean all the stuff out of it. So that would be kind of my thing. I know we had several incidences over on the sort of Ward 2 McClure Road area of people that are going beyond the hours. And I think that frustrates a lot of people, where it's like, yeah, it's supposed to end at whatever it is, 10 o'clock, I think. And, you hear them going off at midnight. I'd certainly like to see anything we did along with an educational campaign, certainly informing people of what is and is not allowed. I think you'll get plenty of calls if everybody knows what is not allowed from all the people that don't like fireworks. That'll probably help enforce some of that side. And then really step up any enforcement to the fullest extent possible of people that are shooting them off after hours or outside of hours. Nothing gets around the neighborhood faster than the kid who got, his parents a couple $100 ticket for shooting off fireworks. I didn't when I was growing up in St. Louis County, but I certainly had friends that weren't allowed to shoot off fireworks anymore because they did get their parents those tickets. And so, I like them. I like to watch them, but I agree that people have gotten irresponsible with them. Used to be you shot off fireworks, you went up and cleaned up your neighbor's yard the next day. Now people are out picking it out themselves. So I don't know if there's anything we can do easily on that front, because how do you prove whose fireworks it was in your neighbor's yard? That you're basically littering in your neighbor's yard. So clean up your stuff.
A few years ago, a lot of places got rid of bottle rockets essentially because those left the confines of your yard. But obviously what's taken its place is the mortar shells. I don't know. To Mike's point, if you look at, your manufacturer is always going to give you a wide berth. They're not going to tell you like, yeah, it's cool to shoot off in your front yard. They're going to tell you should be in a very sterile 200 by 200 foot space. But maybe we should try to think about to your point, Justin, if You shouldn't have projectiles or anything. First of all, it goes without saying, you shouldn't leave anything in the street. Like if you're out there and blowing a bunch of stuff up and leaving trash in the street, I mean, that's just littering as it is. Second, and people that should be notified that, look, if you, hey, do what you're gonna do, but if you accidentally shoot a mortar in your neighbor's, garage, like you're gonna get in trouble. This is not free reign to act like a clown and blow stuff up. This is, so, I'd love to hear what the board's thoughts are about how far we want to take any of that as far as maybe projectiles or anything leaving the confines of your property. To Mike's point, this is small yards out here for the most part. You're off Stony Brook. You can, maybe some residents over on Stony Brook will let everybody go over to their 3-acre lots and shoot them off, but.
That's problems. Things might go straight up, but once they blow up,
Yeah, they go.
it
all
doesn't
over.
come straight down.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna make a recommendation that we do have an ordinance on fireworks as far as when they can be shot and that. That we, James and I and whoever will take some of this conversation, will refine it as far as some common sense cleanups, distances, things like that, and then promote a educational across the city. So
One other thing that I would say as well, the other holiday where people like to shoot off fireworks, New Year's. I think that is, do we have a provision in that that allows for New Year's? I don't remember.
I think we should say, look, please just shoot off fireworks and stop shooting your damn guns off. Because that's the bigger concern I think on New Year's is people shooting guns in the air like fireworks.
I have no words for that one. Yes, absolutely. So if we don't have something that gives parameters just to make sure that people aren't, being criminals by shooting off fireworks, I'd like to see that happen. But also, I don't think we have any cure-all up here. We haven't been able to talk about it because I don't know that there is one. I would ask residents of the city that if they have ideas and solutions and things like that, to please send those to your aldermen. Collectively, I think we come up with the best ideas. So if residents have something, send it all in. Let's make this a bigger conversation.
Have we gone to the offending party directly and talked to him?
So, well, we're working on it.
So
We had a letter drafted, but we pulled it and said, no, we're going to possibly just make a family visit.
just so that I'm clear, is that a request, Mike, to change the ordinance to allow for New Year's as well? Because that's not covered.
Yeah,
No.
I would open that up for discussion as well, because I feel like if we can't stop it, then we should enforce it. If we can't enforce it, then we should make the law something that isn't. I hate enforceable laws.
My only challenge with the New Year's one, and this one I go back and forth, after that, tragic accident that happened, is, that happened at 1 o'clock in the morning. Somebody's sleeping, they wake up, something happened. Our ordinance being, I think it's, if somebody refreshes my memory, I think it's 10 o'clock. You start telling people, oh, well, now you can shoot a flaming projectile up into the air at midnight. And some people don't stay up until midnight. So if something does happen and you do have a tragic accident, you're much more likely if people are popping off fireworks at midnight, 12:15, 12:30 to have a tragic accident than 10 o'clock.
I would tend to agree. I think respectful ways to celebrate New Year's Eve.
And I would absolutely 100% step up enforcement or ask the county to step up enforcement to the extent they can, and they're not dealing with drivers who aren't being smart. That fireworks ordinance on New Year's Eve.
So is the consensus of the board to ask the police department to enforce a ban on fireworks on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day?
Well, they already should.
Yeah,
They already should. It's already illegal.
I would say if we do step up to enforcement on New Year's, you're gonna see, once somebody gets a ticket and they have to pay a hefty fine, and word's gonna get out, they could deter.
That we enforce our rules.
And we can just, I think that's a start,
Yeah, so I don't think historically it's been strictly enforced, so that was my
Right.
question. And if there's an appetite to have that enforced, I would be supportive of that.
Yeah, I think we ought to just put the request in that we really want to enforce.
I think we should enforce all of our ordinances, otherwise we shouldn't have them.
Amen.
Even though-
Right.
Okay, moving on. Appointment of members to the Town Square Vision Steering Committee. I have a slate of members. Pretty much got feedback now from the board. There's, I guess, let's just start with, number one. The Board of Aldermen member.
Mr. Mayor, are we gonna talk about reading multiple readings in one meeting? I missed,
That's next, I think.
is that next? Okay.
That's next then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my reasoning for picking Mark Johnson was, partially when we went to Jeff City. His connection with senators and state reps was, pretty phenomenal. I mean, he took me through the chambers, through the offices, and just secretary after secretary called him in. We went in and visited with multiple, through his prior experience as, president of 13 years. TNT Telecommunications.
27.
He's got a lot of influence. That was impressive to me. Not just his influence, but his contacts throughout the city. So I felt like he, out of the aldermen that, put in for that position, Mike being the second one, I felt like Mark was, my opinion, by far better candidate. So now I'm hearing that, I'd like discussion and say, okay, I'm open to changing this slate. However, the board's gonna decide and moving forward with this and getting this done, getting this behind us. So. Discussion on that position.
I think that we're gonna go line by line down this. We're probably gonna run out of time before we can get the other items on the agenda. So
I think most
I
of
would
these are
say-
pretty,
I will say, I'll restate my position from last time, that I think this list, which is almost completely unchanged. I don't feel like this is a good representation or provides the objectivity that is intended for this committee. And I sent over to you, list of my recommendations and reasonings. We discussed that. I don't see any of that feedback reflected here at all. So I would object to nominations, but I'm not going to go line by line. And
well, I'm gonna go line by line. So
that
if
is
the
your
board,
prerogative.
that's my prerogative, and I'm gonna go line by line. We're gonna make a decision on this, hopefully tonight.
I hope that we can do this with the amount of decorum that it deserves.
Okay. So.
And one of the things that was brought up to Mayor when I talked to him about this position, that in order for us to get any kind of development along there with commercial development and stuff like that, we're gonna have to get some ingress and egress from the highway. And that's gonna take a lot of work with the state and feds in doing with that. And I was more than willing to help and offer through my connections to work on that part of it, especially that. Because that's what's gonna bring it. To even get the vision that we want to do. So that's all.
My understanding of this committee is that that would be out of the scope of the committee, which I think it's a great thing to pursue, and I welcome that. I think that's an amazing thing. But I do think it's outside the scope of this committee.
One of our number one.
I'll just throw out, I looked at everybody on the list and I looked at what the committee is charged with and I agree with some of, I've agreed with some folks that are on the list in the past and I've disagreed with those same individuals on other things in the past, some more than others. I think everybody's certainly qualified to do this. And I think we also need to remember that, at the end of the day, what the charge is and understanding what the role of each branch is, the mayor certainly has the power to make appointments and he can make those appointments and then we can approve those appointments. It's like, it's a confirmation hearing, essentially. So we can confirm the slate or not. Certainly that's within the purview of the board. But when we sit back, we can put together candidates. My recommendation would be is, hey, if you think there's a couple people that would be, better than others, you put 2, 3, 4 people forward. But at the end of the day, the mayor picks one. You don't see, except for the last couple of years and the last couple of go-arounds, you haven't seen in the Senate where the Senate picks the Supreme Court justice. The president picks the Supreme Court justice and the president confirms them. And that's just the way our system works. If you want to have the power of appointment, then run for mayor. If you don't want to run for mayor, then don't run for mayor. Don't sit in that seat. I don't know. That's just my thought on it. I think everybody's qualified to do it. I do think at least all the people that I know personally, I understand and appreciate their rationale for the decisions they've made when I've agreed with them and disagreed with them. So I think each one of them can bring an interesting perspective and represent each perspective quite well. And at the end of the day, it's a vision, yes. If any alderman thinks that vision is slanted one way or was preconceived from the beginning, then that vision isn't really valuable and we don't have to follow it. So those are my thoughts on it. I think this commission does need to get moving and it needs to get moving quickly. And whatever needs to happen, the impasse needs to be resolved.
I would agree with that. One comment I'd make on what we see in the Senate and others is if the Senate comes back and says this person or these people are not acceptable to the Senate, you don't see the president continue to try to have them confirmed over and over again. You see that back and forth in the conversation.
Yeah, but until recently, that wasn't typically done for political reasons. It was done for qualification reasons. Once upon a time, it used to be if they were qualified to do the job, then you let them do the job.
And additionally,
Unfortunately, we've gone differently at our national level.
And additionally, I don't think this is an apples to apples comparison because you're confirming a slate of selected people. Whereas in the Senate and the Congress, it's one person who is under heavy scrutiny. So I don't see it very similar in that regard at all. This is a slate of people versus one person. So I respect your comments and I understand the process points that you're trying to put out, but this is a slate, not a single person.
They do federal judges in mass.
That's
Yeah.
the case. This is an appointment.
But he didn't say federal judges. He said the Senate.
I used it as an example, but it's true of all appointments.
And point being taken, this is an appointment by the mayor and approved by the board. So if we're gonna sit here and argue back and forth about who should and shouldn't be on there, I think we ought to just put it up for a vote.
Yeah.
And move on with it. There's no sense in discussing it anymore.
Well, if there's no chance in getting these through, okay, we can make amendments to it. Like, for instance, I'd like to,
Alderman Whitman mentioned, he doesn't want to do this in mass. Do you want to go person by person?
No, I didn't say that I didn't want to do it in mass.
Oh, sorry. Well, you were saying that.
I just noted the difference between we're voting as a slate. That's the board's prerogative or the board's job is to vote yes on a slate and the Senate, they vote on a specific person. I never said that I wanted to vote line by line. That's not at all how I represent.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to come up with, this impasse here, because there is a lot. All but 3 people really at this point are in dispute. So I'm sorry, all have been agreed to really, but about 3 people. So my point is, I mean, do you want to have those appointments done so that it is, so that you know, get past that and then get to who it is that isn't disputed? I mean, at least in the private conversations that have happened over the last 2 weeks, communications, it seems to come down to a few people. So if there are people that you can agree on, would it be better for you to have them individually appointed? And there's nothing that says it has to be by slate.
Well, I think
Yeah,
to,
and I didn't finish my full commentary either. My other comment would be, you know, on the same token, the executive needs to appoint a slate that they can get approved. So it's, you know, the responsibility lies with the both, and I think every person here is qualified to do the job. If people want to have a debate over individuals and jockey and negotiate, that's fine. Do you want to do that in a work session? I'll sit here while you do.
Okay, so I know, hearing back from, Dave, that, Mark Hunter is, Laura and Dave's pick. We can add Mark Hunter to this list. Are we okay with doing that?
Why can't we add Cliff Branch to this list and make Mark Hunter the resident rep?
I don't think that'll matter.
You don't think that'll matter? Okay.
They're gonna be on the committee. There won't be any, nobody will be any higher level of
Yeah,
input.
there's no,
Yeah, it's.
I don't know much about Cliff Branch. His name's
Okay.
going to come out of the woodwork.
Cliff is here.
Okay.
Cliff is here. Cliff, would you come forward and just introduce yourself, please, and just kind of give a quick bio?
I love Cliff. He looks great on camera, but I can't hear him.
Okay.
Let's give that to Jeff earlier.
Right.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Cliff Branch. Originally from Syracuse, New York. Been living in Missouri since 1968. I'm a Vietnam vet. Graduate of WashU, 1976, class of 76. Class of 83, Lindenwood University with a MBA in accounting and international business. Worked for Monsanto for 23 years, consulted the last 17 years. I'm retired and play golf most every day. Been out living out in Darien Prairie for 20 years. Any questions?
Any questions? I'd like to see understanding what the committee is charged with doing. What would you like to see from me?
Well, what I would have to do, because this is town square, I don't go over that much. My wife does most of the shopping, right? But I do go over, but I like to take a look at that area. And I want what's best for Darlene. I have no agenda. I just want what's best for Darlene Prairie. This is where I live. This is probably where I'll die.
I don't recognize you from being a participant. Wondering how you got.
I have come here from time to time. When I was doing my consulting, I was mostly consulting out of town and sometimes out of country.
Thank you for that.
Playing for the Raiders?
No.
James, I caught most of the alderman's questions, but they got a little faint there once the microphone got handed off. Like I can't hear you right now. I think I see Costello's lips moving.
Muted might be a big play.
Can you hear me now?
Faintly. I'll jump in. I'll jump out and come back. Maybe that'll help.
Well,
Keep
let's-
going.
Let's continue and try to. get
Yeah,
through
keep going.
So we add Mark Hunter, we're okay with leaving Cliff on.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Woldridge. We all know Mike. Anybody have any problems with Mike? You know, I know Ed is it's kind of an issue with some people. Like just a consensus, is that a deal breaker if we keep Ed on? I know I've talked to,
Yeah, it's a deal breaker.
for you, but not for the whole board.
But
Well, I'm
had to
saying you,
respond for you
okay.
to know, so
Huh?
I think he was responding to your question.
Okay, all right. Well, it was kind of rhetorical yet. I mean, that if it's a deal breaker, then we can, you know, for the whole board, then we can consider someone else. But I've reached out to 3, 4 planning and zoning commissioners, and they had no real objection with Ed being on it. So, no, Ed is a longtime committed resident, government, you know, been involved in the government for a lot of years, and I think he has a lot that he can contribute to a body like this. So,
I think I've made my position pretty clear.
can I show us, a show of hands, who is all right with having Ed on here? Okay. So if Ed's on here, it looks like it's not gonna pass. So we're gonna strike Ed.
As I mentioned to you previously, there are 2 members of P and Z, 2 active members of P and Z on the nominations. I would recommend we move Michael Ridge into the.
Again, the positions of whatever,
But
it
but
really,
it does because the resolution defines a couple of those positions. That is a representative.
okay, we moved Mike into the P and Z slot then, yeah. Yeah. Jack Valentine. Jack was unable to make it today. He actually is recovering from some surgery. So, Keith, were you able to have any conversation with Jack, or are you okay?
No, I wasn't able to have any conversation, but I was able to review the bio and I know it's a pick that you put forward and I respect it and trust it. And if the other alderman from Ward 3 does the same, I would confirm that.
And again, Jack, him and his wife have been coming to meetings from day one when they moved into Garden Prairie. I know, talking to him from meetings, I felt like and asked him if he was interested, and he was, and
Sounds like he has a lot to the committee and I support him.
okay.
Jack's a retired engineer also. He also took the incentive when they were putting in all the fiber in Garden Prairie, not only our neighborhood, but many other neighborhoods. He followed them around,
Yes, and
making sure they were following the rules and locating things correctly and stuff like that. So he does care about the city.
he did bring things forward to myself that he found that we addressed with the fiber issue. So. And then we have Wendy Rackman. Any objection to Wendy? No objection? Pete, no objection to Wendy? Okay. Debbie Haley. Absolute, about as solid as you can get for a representative of Garden Prairie. Any objections to Debbie Haley? Hearing none. Jay Sansone,
I have my reservations, but I also realize that everybody else seems to be a fan, so he would pass anyhow, I believe.
want to voice your reservations or no?
Well, he was an advocate for Prairie Encore and he made comments and I don't know, I just didn't have any positive interaction with him. But again, I know that he was a prior alderman and attorney, so I respect that.
John Ladeau, he's Assistant Fire Chief for Wentzville Fire Department. And I did not reach out to him, but I do know him and I do, why I put him on there is because I feel like in anything we do, a perspective from someone in the fire department is kind of important on what decisions we make about developments. Garden Prairie does not have a fire department. Well, if everybody knows that, but we are covered by Wentzville, O'Fallon, Cottleville, and Lake St. Louis. So 4 different fire departments cover our city, depending on where you live. Carl Moss,
I think Carl would be an excellent candidate. He has a lot of really good interaction and history with dealing with municipal governments. I've had conversations with him just because he's had some issues. He's a Cordoba resident and he invited me to their HOA meeting. Yeah, I think he has really a lot of knowledge and I think he has a lot to give.
I'm not sure if everybody knows, but just for your information, Carl was instrumental in pretty much preventing O'Fallon and Lake St. Louis consuming Garden Prairie with their annexation. They started the year it was, but he pretty much spearheaded a campaign to change how properties were annexed and pretty much prevented, I think it was Proposition S. He can give you all the history. He went door to door. He went to the council, St. Charles County Council, and he prevented pretty much single-handedly Garden Prairie getting annexed into both Lake St. Louis and O'Fallon. So he's really solid pick.
He didn't
Oh.
mention that to me, but he went on, he was very knowledgeable about tax incentives, although not necessarily a big advocate, but yeah, I think it'd be a great addition.
Okay, and then Mark Hunter, we're gonna add Mark. So there's the slate. We're taking Ed off, we're adding Mark. So with those amendments, I'd like to just move forward and
I recommend that we backfill the Ward 2 representative. Mike Woolridge.
We can just move Debbie Haley into that spot. You had Mark Hunter at the bottom and you moved Debbie Haley in. You got the same number of people. And a Ward 2 representative.
I'd like to see the other recommendation that I put forward, David Hoskins, land surveyor by trade, and his life all over the world, with different governments, especially developing areas on soliciting and securing foreign investments, proper land use, land law. I think he would be great.
adding. Everybody okay with adding him? Putting him on? Another member?
How many does that take us to total?
Pardon me? Yes,
How many does that take us to total? Does that make it 11?
Be up till 12.
there's 11 now, it'll be 12.
Looking at the resolution I've got, there were 10 on it. We took Ed off, but added Mark. That would leave it at still 10, right? So adding one more would make it 11. Would be an
You're
odd
right.
number.
I didn't cross out Mike when I moved him up. Yes. Mike.
Okay. And then an odd number, then, you know, sometimes it's nice to have an odd number.
11. Okay, so we're adding
David Hoskins.
David Hoskins. Everybody okay?
Yeah, that's Ward 2.
Good. Let's move on.
Could you want to run down that list again for me, please?
We've got as Alderman, we have Mark Johnson, we have,
That's,
Yeah, I have a
that's a
problem.
non-starter for us.
Yeah.
no,
Oh, my position.
okay. Okay, no.
Right.
So. All right, coming off, Mark, because you can attend the meetings,
Oh,
you can
okay.
contribute. Anybody can attend and contribute. So. Good, same with Mike. Put Mike on and we pass it. Gonna have time to do this? Okay.
This has been something that's been very high on my priority list since I became alderman. That's why I've pushed so hard.
Okay, here's my, another one of my big concerns with this. I sat down with Kim. Okay. We went over what the city has spent on these types of initiatives. Okay. To date, we have spent since 2007 with Uptown Planning, another planning, that was, a comp plan that was done by Luke Kehoe in 2014. And from 2020 to, 2023, the city has spent $676,900. Okay. I'm trying to come up with a plan that's going to bring developers into Garden Prairie. Okay.
What's the estimated cost of this?
We don't know. I mean, we're estimating somewhere between 20 and 50,000. Okay, with getting,
And Mayor, Mayor,
okay,
I got a number from PGA
okay,
today,
okay, all right,
67,000.
67,000. Okay, so there you go, 67,000. All right, I didn't know we got that number. So,
Got it like,
okay, so I guess,
now we're not
Can I-
required to go, we're not required to go with PGA, we're not required to go with the outline that they sent me. Unfortunately, it was today. I was hoping to get it last week, but this contemplates several public meetings, several meetings of the vision committee, artistic rendering, charrettes, et cetera. So, I mean, obviously, this isn't necessarily an a la carte sort of quote, but the more public hearings we have, the more committee meetings we have, the more artist renderings and pretty pictures we put up there for residents to see what this plan could look like. It costs a lot, that costs more money. If we say that I'm going to do all that stuff, it costs considerably less. So I would like to, that was going to be part of my report, to talk about that going forward. Board needs to have a conversation about that next step. Once we've got a group that we're ready to have a meeting, need to have some facilities.
One quick question on that, and if it's gonna be part of your briefing later, please just let me know and we can just table it, because I know we're running past time. But is that organization or that company, are they gonna provide kind of structure and guidance for the the committee as they meet to make sure we maximize the use of the volunteers' time for this committee?
Absolutely. So I mean, they'll set up all the meetings. They'll facilitate them. They'll obviously provide any information, data, prior to, so that the meeting, so that the group can be educated ahead of time for whatever discussion. They'll take whatever comes out of those conversations and that input, and they'll put into place a plan that both seeks additional information, seeks public input. Like I said, I think there's there could be 3 public meetings that are part of the scope, and I'll pull it up here when I
Okay.
go to the committee or give my report. But yeah, this is so that the staff will not be involved, and the staff can participate and support, but this will be led by the citizens involved and then facilitated by the consultant.
Excellent. Thank you, James.
So at the end of this vision committee, the city is looking at over $750,000 spent. And just as a breakdown, our return on investment is nearly 0. So,
Eric, can I ask a question?
yes.
What are the dates of that? Does that go back to
2007 was when we
To
started
Uptown? which-
Uptown. We got one development from Uptown.
Well, what a waste. I mean, that,
Well, it still was a vision.
but I think it envisioned that Highway 40 was the ocean or the Gulf, but
We still spent,
but still spent it. I understand. But if you look at it, what it was, and then also it was through a big economic downturn. So, that has to be factored into it also. But 0 results are still 0 results.
I think, Mayor, I think your point is taken that this is our 3rd go around on this. And I think that's where it's going to be important for the board to have some of these conversations about cost and what expectation is and what the end result is that we're looking for. And understanding that we're not looking for a zoning plan. We're looking for a vision of what this community wants to be and what it should be. And that is very different than a zoning plan and Uptown. Anyway.
and in addition, we still have the PUD process. And most developments go through the PUD process.
Yes, just,
Exactly.
I never took the scope of this, and we do need to have that conversation in a real way, like, what the board's expectations are, a little more granularly from the committee. But I've never taken the scope to be a new comprehensive plan. I don't see a need for pretty drawings and artist renderings and things like that. I think this is more about understanding culture and expectations from our residents and what that area should look like from that standpoint, and give them an opportunity to sit down with developers and look at the practicalities of it and help to form a practical vision that meets the culture and the expectations of our residents, and let that drive our decisions, not necessarily if they're going to come in and prescribe zoning. But
All right, let's
do
move
think we need to
forward.
document that. And I do want to make one last comment. $750,000 over the last 16 years is quite a bit. By my calculations, that's less than 0.5% of our budget into that economic development activity. I may be wrong. 16 years of city budget, 750,000. So that while that number is high, I think that it's not
44,000. 44,000.
So I don't think it's completely outside the realm. I do think we need to do it better this time, and the points are well made.
Okay. So we got Mike Hoslow, Mike Waldridge, Cliff Branch, Jack Ballantyne, Wendy Rackman, Debbie Haley, EJ Sansone, John Ledoux, Carl Moss, Mark Hunter, and David Hoskin. Okay. So, on. Changes to the procedures and acting ordinances. think, we left off at, the number of times we're gonna read a bill. Reiterate that?
So we've adopted recently a number of different changes to the ordinance that would guide how we govern our meetings. One of the issues that has been a perennial issue was whether or not we should, and we can, but under our ordinance, we can read bills 2 times during one meeting, but should there be a period of time between readings for certain bills, whether that be zoning matters, whether that be resolutions or changes to policy or ordinances, and should there be a period of time in which, or should there be instances in which one reading would be sufficient, such as issues of consent agenda items, purchasing authority, or various other public health and safety, other emergencies, or contractual legal items that require immediate attention. So I asked the city attorney to provide, he and I both put together some information. He provided a number of other 4th-class cities, and as well as we put together some charter cities and how they address the issue of whether or not an ordinance should be read full 2 times in a meeting, or if there should be time between. You'll notice that most 4th-class cities, as it states in the state law, they do say that that has to be read twice and that it may occur at a single meeting. It is the practice of some cities to read it over 2. It is the practice of a few to read it during the same. There are some cities, such as through the charter cities, which require it to be over 2, unless specific type of bill or situation or special consideration. So we provided this information to the board and just asked further input from the board as to what the board's preference is going forward on how we should address the readings of bills.
My general feeling is that if we were going to codify anything, any sort of policy or resolution, I would opt for the Wildwood approach because I like having the ability to read something twice and pass it if we need to, and or if it's easy enough to do. Generally, I would say that we don't need to change necessarily any ordinance or policy. It's more so of a practice side of things. I've sort of always been a little bit on the side of a practice of reading it once, having a discussion, and then giving some time to think about it, unless it's obviously a cleared, issue that needs to go forward right away. Read it once, then read it the second time at the next meeting as a practice.
Justin, the only thing that I would suggest, and that it doesn't matter one way or the other to me, the way the board does it, I think it's important for the residents though to understand very clearly under what circumstances that you're going to read it once or twice. I mean, we've already gone through this recently about what is practice or what is what has been the general practice of the board versus what is legal, and whether or not there's special considerations given to special zoning applications or whatever. I just think that for the sake of residents understanding what is our policy, I think it should be clearly articulated. And it has to be enough leeway to make sure that people can, if the board so chooses to expedite something, but I think it would behoove everyone for the purposes of transparency and for the citizens feeling comfortable with what is practice and not just what is customary, which I think is what which is caused some questioning, I think, the recent past, to just articulate exactly what you're going to do and when and why.
Well, Yeah, I can totally see, I can understand that.
And it was, I was, on the same vein as Justin was about just making this kind of a custom more than a policy, but, because of your request, I understand the clarity necessary for city staff and your. Um, at any point, regardless of what that says, in the rules of order, we can, in an emergency situation where there is a, vote of the board, suspend the rules of order to be able to bring it forward. I guess the question then becomes, do we anticipate that being a common thing? Because if I wouldn't want to suspend the rules of order as a common practice.
Yeah.
If we don't see that as, if we see that as being a very rare thing that we would read both in one night, then I'd be more okay with it.
Yeah, and it kind of seems to be, and I just throw my 2 cents out there. I kind of favor the Ferguson approach. So simply because they lay out the reasons why you would read it out, and it is, you know, to James's point, it's the transparency is there. I think it kind of covers. Oops, sorry. I think it covers both elements of that. Specifically, the first paragraph there, I like, except for it should be read by its title only. I think there's merit in reading it in its entirety each time. It's just kind of a simple. Oh, okay, no, good.
We only read it by title. We don't read the
Yeah.
whole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know.
If you want to hire an auctioneer for our meetings, then
Okay.
I'd have to be like the Mike
The
Commission.
entire title, the entire title.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can have John do that.
Maybe my question is,
Misunderstood.
You would write a lot of shorter ordinances.
maybe my question is rhetorical, but I'll address John Young. What was the intent of having to read it twice? When the rule was put in place for municipal government to have to read a bill twice, was the intent to read it twice in the same night?
Most of the state.
no, half those legislators are sleeping the first time.
Well, I understand. I think the intent probably was you read it one time, then you go to another meeting and you read it a second time.
Well, first, it used to be 3 times.
So you go
Oh,
three.
fine.
Well, it used to be 3 times.
State.
And then it got changed to 2. There was some litigation about whether it could be done over 2 meetings or 1 meeting. Court said 1 meeting is fine. And now the statute expressly says it may be read over 1 meeting. I think the reading is not so much a function of the number of meetings, but the fact that when this was originally presented as legislation, there weren't copies because they were handwritten on loose paper.
That makes sense.
Okay, so
And
So you had to be awake the whole time in order to know what you were voting on, is what you're saying.
all right, so can we move on to 5?
Can I ask one more thing? And I do want to make sure that the Cedar Center folks have plenty of time. When Alderman Waterman said that he liked the Ferguson one, there's a couple other things in here that I just want to get clarification on. One of them has them posting in a public place 3 days prior to the first reading. And the other one has to do with amendments and what comes down to a substantial. Do we want to broach either of those? I know those are in here, or we just want to talk about the 2 readings?
I think it's an excellent point. Posting on a public place 3 days in advance. I think one bite of the apple at a time, my personal perspective on this points, but it's simply the surrounding verbiage, but it's sort of deviating from the point of what we were trying to get to with the reading part. So I'd say my personal thought on that is just to look really reading it, once in, 1 meeting, coming back and reading it again and then voting. So I think just if those are points that the board would like to bring up in the future for the discussion, but for now, I'd say stick to the primary points.
Sounds good to me.
Hey, Justin, do you have some?
No, I was agreeing generally with Keith that the amendment side of things, especially most of the amendments that we do, aren't substantial amendments. So I don't even know when that would even arise, but we probably don't need to deal with it in terms of having that language in our policy.
Okay, so let's move to our next item of
Well,
discussion.
is there a direction for the staff on this to do something?
Yeah, I think we're gonna go with the
Is that the consensus?
consensus is to
Okay.
go with the Ferguson model,
Okay.
all right? So I understood.
And do you want this as a code change or do you just want this as a resolution that it's board policy?
I would recommend a resolution as board policy.
Well, I
rather than a-
I've spoken out on this one before, only because board policies are not readily available to the residents.
Oh,
And I
Yeah.
think when residents look at. We go back to, oh, we've got to have a sunshine law to Kim and she's got to dig it out.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would generally agree if
Well,
one of the
my
big
next-
end goals of doing it is public availability of the information, it probably does make more sense as an ordinance.
Yeah, I concur in the spirit of transparency.
Delay my last, we go to. Okay. Item number 5, request from Alderman Wadling. To bring Cedarstone Development back on the agenda.
Yes, I would like to bring the single family back on the agenda, which I don't have it in front of me right now what that bill is, but I don't want to bring the commercial or multifamily forward at this time. This area falls into the Town Square Vision Committee's purview. With the delay that's been going on with it, I don't think it's fair to the developer that they should have to wait that period of time where they're talking about putting the single family is almost impossible to put anything but single family because of the size of the footprint of a house versus a commercial building versus an apartment building. And this area 5 or 6 years ago was designated for single family housing. That's why it was cleared out to begin with. But we have known this was coming for a couple years at least, that they were talking about it. We encouraged them to put something forward. And in that light, I would make a motion that we do bring the single family housing portion of Cedarstone development back on the agenda for our next meeting.
Any other alderman?
That being said, I agree with you with putting it back on, but also in our discussions, when we have had this coming forward for the last couple of years, we also, one thing we were wanting to be done is the commercial development also. So why not put both of them back on? I mean, it's a start of the vision of what we want with commercial development. I would say you put them both back on.
I do see this as a single.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So we've got a motion by Dave to put it back on. Is there a second before we
Second.
debate it? Got a second? Okay, all in favor?
No.
Oh,
Let him
okay.
debate now.
Now, okay, now you can
Okay,
debate.
so-
Yeah.
No, it's never. Okay. I do see this as one lot, one piece of land that needs to be developed in a cohesive way. If residential on the backside is part of that cohesive view, I understand there's 2 different PUDs submitted. But I would agree that it should be considered in totality. And that's where I get hung up because I have concerns about the totality of it. Part of my reasoning for asking for the vision committee to weigh in on it was because they might change my mind. They might come back with something else that would change that. If we want to get into a discussion of the whole, then I would be okay with entering into that discussion.
And the reason I say it is, it goes to the point of, if you build it, they'll come. If we start some commercial development there, maybe we can get other commercial development to follow with it. Or other builders see what's going in there. That is our vision, to put commercial in there. Let's continue it. It's a start.
I don't know that that's our vision. That's what the committee is
Like-
going to.
And,
The committee may come up and say, we want it all commercial. We don't want any multifamily there at all. So that front portion, should be under the purview of the vision committee.
I understand what you're saying, but you have to also remember the vision committee. We have the ultimate authority of what goes in. They don't have any authority on what does and doesn't go in there. It's just the vision. But I believe this board has always considered, we want this a commercial development. That's what we're putting this vision committee for. I think that's a hindsight behind it, because we don't need more residential. We need commercial activity in there and to get something started.
Yeah, and to that point, I would say, in general, I agree with you. The reason why I am hesitant to bring that forward for discussion is because I don't think the commercial that's proposed there right now is nearly sufficient for this. And I don't want to shoot it down when we have a group of people who are going to be looking at that and creating cohesive vision, which would end up with rethinking that and leading us to a favorable approval. When if it came before me right now, what I see, I don't think I could support it.
That's fine. I understand what you're saying, but you're pushing off. Development, because vision committee's got to be put together. It's got to form, it's got to operate.
If we want to bring it forward to discussion as is, I would just say that we need to look as a whole.
I would like to amend the motion to add Bill 2329 and 2330. Bring it back to the.
You have a second? To the motion?
I'll second.
I think you heard my reasons why is I think we need to move forward. And I think we've stalled long enough, and if we're looking for commercial development, that's what they're going, and it's already in our comprehensive plan to put apartments up by the highway. So it all.
I don't think that's in the comprehensive.
Yes, it is. The apartments are supposed to be by the highways.
Oh, really?
Well, there's a zoning for RM that was allowed, but I don't think that's in the comprehensive plan, but I'll go back and look at it.
So I think when, it sounds like there's a motion to bring them both back. I don't see any issue with bringing them both back. I think that, it is two separate ordinances. So we can certainly bring them both back and decide what we want to do with each at the time. I would expect then, just given the discussion that I've heard, there should be a healthy discussion around sort of Dave's comments on, is that lot and its size and its attributes is really the only thing that will work there. Single family residential, I'd like to hear a little bit more on that and understand that a little bit more. And then I certainly understand some of the concerns about the commercial, whether or not it's sufficient for the long-term sort of needs of the city as a whole in terms of, generating commercial tax base and otherwise. I think that's where a healthy discussion around these two would probably be good.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second to bring them both back.
Well, it was
To
a
amend.
motion to amend, so we have to put that up first.
Vote on the
Okay.
amendment.
A motion to amend the first motion. All in favor?
I
Opposed?
Nay.
Yeah.
So it's a tie?
Roll call.
Well,
Well,
We're not.
okay, go ahead and call the roll, Kim.
Alderman Wondling,
Nay.
Alderman Underbach,
Aye.
Alderman Whitman,
No.
Alderman Gettemeyer,
Nay.
Alderman Johnson, Alderman Kessler.
Okay, so it's 3-3. I have the option to vote or not. I choose to stay neutral on this. So it fails. So the main motion is back on the table to bring the resident portion forward. Have a motion or motion a second. We'll have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so then we're gonna bring back,
29.
29, Bill,
23, 29,
26, 29,
43, 29,
43, 29.
43, 29.
23.
23, 29. We'll be back on the agenda next meeting. Okay, any comments or any issues on the agenda?
I just had a quick question. Can everybody hear? Everybody okay?
YouTube.
Okay.
Well, it's loud up here. There's something wrong with the speaker or the volumes for those speakers out there.
Not sure. Gotta figure out how to adjust that.
Okay. We'll do our best to speak up, but just, I know we've gotten some feedback, so I just wanted to check, kind of get a pulse. So it sounds like it's a pretty resounding no. We'll try to speak up and then adjust in the future. Thank you.
Any comments on the agenda for tonight? Regular meeting? No? Staff communication, city attorney,
I have nothing, Mayor.
city engineer?
I have a written report for you all, and of note, the city-sponsored slab replacement drawings are nearing completion. And they're going through our office's check process and review internal. And they should be ready next week for board and submittal to M&H next week.
Okay.
So I don't have their schedule. And unless the mayor has heard something from M&H.
It's been a few weeks, but the last I heard, they said the middle to the end of August.
Okay.
So that was the best they could give me.
So we'll have the drawings ahead of time, and then I will communicate with M&H and James staff to proceed and get a schedule from them.
I'll actually reach out to Rick tomorrow, and try to get a firm date.
Okay. But if you don't mind, Mayor, let me complete everything and go through our check process, internal review, QA, QC, and then I will send those drawings to you and James for any other review and comment. And then I would suggest then after that, we could do that.
Okay.
Reach out. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Next, city administrator.
I'll withhold my comments till the regular meeting.
Hey, Alderman,
Same.
Mayor, same. Hey, had a motion to adjourn?
Second. First. I'm gonna be first. He was seconded.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hear none, the work session is adjourned. Okay, we're gonna take a quick recess.
And James, you're gonna end this one and start the other one, right?
Yep.
I'll see you there.
Perfect.
But at least it's. Hey, hey.
I thought.
How you doing? South Carolina?
Here to see how them other guys said.
Very good.
Well, that's good.
It's all of us.